Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the May 30th, 2024 Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. And before we start, just a couple things. One is we have verified we have no public comments for tonight. But just kind of give you a quick overview, we're going to be looking at the proposed budgets that we've seen up to date. And hopefully by the time we leave this evening, we'll be able to agree on a proposed annual budget that we will send to publication for our citizens to review. And then we'll later have a public hearing on June the 18th at 7 p.m. And anyway, tonight's agenda, as I said, will hopefully be able to have a budget that Michael can get together to send to publication. So having said all that, we don't have any minutes to approve. Is that correct, Mark? All right. Number 2 on the agenda is a public capital projects fund for 2023-24 budget amendment. And Director, if you don't mind. Oh, that's fine. Get you to cover that again. I've got it here if you don't have it.
Yeah, I've got it right here with me. So. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This first amendment is for Fund 177, which is our Capital Projects Fund. So what happened each July 1st, outstanding purchase orders in this fund are liquidated. The funds roll into fund balance, which in this fund is $34,685, committed for capital projects. These purchase orders are projects that were not finished by June 30th. Amendment number 1 took those funds out of $34,685 committed for capital projects and rebudgeted the expenditures for the carryover projects that were approved in the previous year but had not been completed. Due to accounting procedures set forth by the Tennessee Comptroller's Office, this amendment reverses amendment number 1 to bring the budgeted amounts in balance and not over budget.
Okay, something I want to add to this. You know, there's some questions about capital projects in particular. And Chairman Phillips, you mind if I call on you to, if you'd mind speaking about that? You and I both have had quite a bit of experience. I know Chairman Gooch also over the years with differences we've had with schools' budgets and how it actually, our business as a commission of funding versus their job of deciding where things go.
I don't mind you calling on me at all. I hope I can speak intelligently on it. I learn something new all the time, and with all of the questions that have been asked, I continually learn things, and things continue to change every year. But the way I understand this process, school board's budget is entirely different than any of the other departments' budgets that we look at. They have their own board, and their own board runs, in essence, our school system. Our process is to fund the request. What we've done, always done in the past, is to kind of look at certain funds, and if there are ups and downs in those funds, we question that, and then we choose to fund it or not to fund it and adjust the funding. And as far as us going over line item by line item, we can do that, and I know we've done that in the past at times. But my thought is, and what I normally do, is just take a look at whatever item we're talking about, like 141 as an example, and look at the request and how it's different from last year, ask those questions, and then vote whether or not to fund it. If we decide not to fund it at that entire level because of a certain item that's in there, the school board has the opportunity or the authority to continue to move funds around, to move monies around in that fund. So we really don't have a lot of control over particular line items in that area. So some of the questions that we're asking are legitimate and are really pertinent to the process. But as far as us having control over line items in that fund, we really don't. We do have control over funding, whether it's over or under, but as far as when the budget is actually set, the school board is the one that that actually makes decisions within that fund. Michael, am I saying that kind of sort of right? So if that's what's on some minds, you know, the Health and Ed took a look at that Tuesday night, if I'm not mistaken, at least from a lot of experience that I've had on the Health and Ed department. We've taken a look at those bottom lines, and Health and Ed did, and deemed that they were appropriate and adopted the recommendation. I know there was some concern over from the Budget Committee to continue to take a look at that tonight, and that's fine and well. But my thoughts, and once again, Mayor or Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our thought at Health and Ed was that we took a look, we asked the questions, and then we adopted a budget, or we recommended that we adopt a budget. The Budget Committee is really oversight, and they can ask any questions that they want to, but just to keep in mind that our responsibility as a commission is to fund the school board's request. And what they do with that in any particular fund, they have the authority to move around. If there's something in a particular fund that we don't like and we reduce that fund, as a commission, we reduce that fund, that doesn't mean that that particular line item will not be funded within the school board. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this process. Is that kind of sort of what you had in mind, Chairman?
It is, and thank you, Jeff. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but one other thing I want to comment about this particular amendment. We will be reviewing under item 4, the 177, and that's where most of the questions were asked the other night. So you'll have the opportunity even after this vote on this amendment. And this amendment, what I want to point out is this is basically a bookkeeping change. This does not change revenues. This is a requirement that State Comptroller's Office has handed down to us. Now, if we cannot pass it, if y'all decide not to pass it, however, if we do not pass this, if I'm not mistaken, we will definitely get a ruling from the Comptroller's Office saying, don't do that. Can you correct me if I'm wrong on that, Michael, or are we right?
If we do not pass this, we will have a finding on our audit. Like I said, it's to reverse an amendment that was done at the start of the year to change how we treat prior year encumbrances. And so since they wanted us to treat those prior year encumbrances differently, we had to we need to reverse the amendment that we did back in, was it September, Brian? October?
Yeah, I believe it's September.
Anyway, Mr. Harris, excuse me, Irwin, I'm sorry.
Happy to yield to Craig. Okay, we're voting. I'm just trying to track this. We have a piece of paper that says Fund 187 Fund Balance Amendment, and I've got two other pieces of paper that are just now here when I sat down. Does any of this tie to does this tie to either of?
This piece of paper for the amendment stands on its own. The only reason you have this one in front of you is because we didn't have iPads tonight.
Fair enough.
And so this is exactly what was scanned on the iPad from Tuesday night. So this is the amendment. This is all you're looking to vote on right now. Is the one that says Fund 177 budget amendment. And then if you flip to the back of that two-sided page, it has the actual debit increases and decreases.
Okay, and there wasn't any additional backup to this. I think that was one of the questions. Kind of further breakout, and if there's not, that's okay.
I don't believe there's any other.
I believe what he's asking is for the project breakout.
So this doesn't have any backup, because the only backup would be the amendment from September that we did.
Fair enough.
So
okay.
I could pull the backup from the amendment in
understand.
September, but we're only reversing that one.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Just trying to get clarified.
Any further discussion on the request? If not, I will entertain a motion. Motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, the motion carries. Next on the agenda is a general purpose school fund for 2024-25 budget, and this is 141. Welcome, Director.
Evening, Commissioners, Chairman, Mayor. This is, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We discussed this in detail on Tuesday night. The request is for our 141 budget of revenue of $538,434,765 with expenditures of $549,828,778. That does have an $11 million difference to upfront fund two of our charter schools that are Rutherford County authorized, and then Rutherford Collegiate Prep, which is not. I'm happy to answer any questions on 141.
Any questions from the committee? We've had a couple of days to kind of digest this, and maybe some of us feel a little more comfortable, I know, after looking at some of it, but any questions? Chairman Harris, you recognize.
Mr. Chairman, I went over this in pretty much detail Tuesday and other night, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve Fund 141.
Have a motion to approve 141. Second. And a second, Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. All right. Item 4, Education Capital Projects Fund for the 2024-25 budget. And this is actually the 177 fund.
Yep, so thank you very much for 141. The next one before you is Fund 177. I know there's going to be some discussion on this. We handed out two different requests. One of those is a carryover amount from that went back to 2021, is that correct? 2022, 2023, and then the other document is this year's update of where we are. The first request is, or the request for Fund 177 is in the amount of $19,748,339, and that is in revenue and expenditures, and I know there will be some discussion around that amount, but that is the request that was made on Tuesday.
Any questions for the director on the Capital Projects Fund 177? Chairman Harris, you recognize.
Yes, we had discussed this on Tuesday, so I want to decrease capital projects by $652,000. So my motion is, and I really don't know what I'm doing right here, Commissioner.
Let me interject. If you don't mind, we got the gist. You're looking to increase revenues for a 1% pay increase. Is that what
Yes, sir.
what you indicated the other night? I'm going to ask our finance director to actually give the numbers that it would take and the changes in these funds to make that happen. Michael?
Commissioner Harris, I'm going to recap, kind of, you tell me if that's what you're looking for, and then I'll give you the numbers. So currently, in the budget proposed, there was 1.9 pennies going into educational capital projects. If we were to reduce that to 1.4 pennies and move 0.001 pennies to the ambulance service fund, and then increase the county general to 0.005 pennies, that would give $18.9 million to the Fund 177, and I believe would give you the money in Fund 118 and 101 for the proportionate version of those raises. that would move a little more than the $600,000 number that you said. If you wanted to reduce, if you needed to reduce that, we would have to do that between county general and educational capital projects.
So I need to request in my motion that 1.9 pennies and decrease it to 1.4,
0.014 pennies, yes.
1.04.
0.014 pennies, and that would move the estimated revenues for Fund 177 to $18,975,938.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve capital's projects for $18,900,000, and we'll be moving a penny, 0.004. Why are you shaking your head? What am I doing wrong?
That would be to amend the revenue to be $18,975,938. And it would make the pennies in that fund an additional 0.014 pennies.
Okay. Any other questions? I mean, are we good on this? Make sure
I think
got my
you do,
numbers right, 'cause
Michael.
I'm a little
Just
off.
let me recap. County general would go to .005. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then keep in mind, right now, we're only voting on 177.
Right.
So that's why I was reading those numbers. So that's why I read that revenue number first would be the $18,975,938. And then their additional pennies would be .014 for a total of 11.4 pennies.
Okay, so that's what the motion would do. You've heard the motion. Do I hear a second on his motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we have a second for discussion. One thing I do want to mention, and Chairman Harris mentioned the amount of estimated revenues, and Michael told us it would be $18,978,000. The year before last year's budget, it was 18 million and some change over that. So it's actually about a $970,000 increase over last year's budget if this change was to take effect. So if anybody's wondering about what that's going to do to the schools. Any questions from the committee? Chairman Harris?
What is this, interesting to hear from the school board, what does this do to y'all, if anything?
Very little, because we will have the adequate facilities tax, or hopefully we'll have the adequate facilities tax, or the school's facility, whatever the tax has changed. So this has $2 million less roughly than we had last year, and as that comes in, this should be able to make up the difference. And it is more than we received last year.
Anyone else on the committee have a question?
Chairman, I have a clarification.
Okay, go ahead, Mark, and then I'll recognize Chairman
If we
Gooch.
could, before we have discussion, we talked about revenue, but we did not talk about expenditures in this fund. So I want to clarify what the expenditures would be before we go on with discussion, because that could make a difference.
But my recommendation would be for the expenditures to also change to the $18,975,938 would be my recommendation, to keep the fund balanced.
Okay, Chairman Gooch, you're recognized.
Well, that was kind of my question, but two questions. Is what would it do to the fund balance? And I don't know if Mr. Lee needs to come up, but will there be any projects that would be scratched that y'all had planned for this year?
Initially, what we'll do is we'll invest less into LED lights, because we're trying to transition into LED lights to try to bring some of that electricity savings down. And so we'll wait to invest in some of that until we get more of the adequate facilities tax money.
So at the end of the day, or end of the year,
Should come out
you don't
even.
think that you're going to be scrapping anything?
No.
And so what does that do again to the ending fund balance? Right now, it stands at what, 31?
If you
Or
keep
it's
the-
going to be the same because we're
it
going
would
to
be
cut the
same,
revenue?
If you kept and generally in this fund, we try to keep the revenue expense the exact same.
Gotcha.
Now, the other thing that could help is that mid-year, we could come back, as we talked about earlier, or a few meetings ago, we hopefully we reduce the school facilities tax estimate. If that comes in stronger, we can revise that up. Because there's no maintenance of effort in this fund, we could revise that up mid-year and not affect maintenance of effort. So that could potentially put more in there. And I will say the school board has voted on this budget twice. Originally, they thought it was going to be much less. And now I believe even with this change, would put almost $1 million more in there. And so I think it was in conjunction also with the plan of having to move some pennies around next year to open the Beatty Elementary School, or I can't think of the new name right now, Poplar Hill maybe?
Poplar Hill. Yep.
And so this was in conjunction with also thinking about how we were going to move some pennies for future opening of schools. And so we didn't want to hurt that either, hurt the future plans either.
Okay, I'm going to vote for this and support it as long as I'm satisfied that nothing is going to be scratched. You don't anticipate anything going to be scratched that you had already planned for this year, correct?
sir.
Okay.
Any other comments? Mr. Pearson?
How many of our employees will this help?
When we get down this, if you were to vote after this on item, I believe it's 5. If you were to vote to do the increase to 1% across the board, it would affect every county employee except the elected officials.
And how many would that be? You got any idea?
1,500 or 1,700. I'm looking at Sonia back there to see how many county employees do we have on the payroll. 15 or 1,700? 1,800?
18. Do you have any dollar amount idea that they'll benefit from this 1%?
It would increase the county general budget around $900,000. The Fund 118 Ambulance Service Fund budget amendment by around $150,000, and pretty close to the same amount in Fund 116 for solid waste.
Per person? Ballpark?
Anywhere from $500, $750 to a couple thousand, depending on how much that person makes.
Thank you.
You recognize, Mayor.
Thank you. And my question is, and I'm supportive of this. Anytime we can help our employees, I want to do it. But I want to make sure, as we discussed in the initial budget process, there were 4 points that Michael and I tried to address. The fourth point was, to what extent does any movement or action we take have the potential adverse consequence on future budgets? Because we just don't budget for this budget. We budget anticipating what the impact's going to be on future budgets, which is the way any solid business runs their organization, as many of you know. So I want to ask Michael, and I want you all know this is not a rehearsed question, but Michael, can you tell us if this movement and 1% raise will have any significant or substantial impact on future budgets that you're aware of today?
Obviously, anytime you spend more now, that's less later. However, with the way we're moving the pennies around and things like that, I think this was the best outcome to protect us for the next couple of years, to also not only protect the county side, but also hopefully protect the school side, as they're going to have some future needs in the next 2 years as well. So, and obviously, as an employee mathematically, I'd rather get the raise this year than next year, just mathematically, time value of money. So I think this is the best case scenario for all parties involved to protect us for the next, 1 to 2 years for sure. And after that, who knows?
So to be clear, you don't expect there's no adverse effect here for doing this. Would that be right? You don't see any at this point? No. Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Irvin?
Yep. Okay, so help me connect the dots. If the original problem was vacancies in the sheriff's office, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to sort this out. The original problem was employees, vacancies in the sheriff's office, and that then went to, instead of giving them specific dollars to do whatever they need to do to fill those vacancies, it's now morphed into I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just trying to assess it. It's now morphed into 1% for all county employees. Is that what I'm basically, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to assess.
Recognize the mayor, he's going to answer that for you.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, Commissioner Irvin. I think what we had is we had two distinct issues that were very similar but still different. And the first issue, I believe Commissioner Harris, and I want to make sure that Commissioner Harris hears this so he can correct me, but what he was trying to do was make sure that all county employees were being competitively compensated with our peers in other government-like services around Middle Tennessee. What the sheriff shared with us the other night, especially, and Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, but especially with the jail, was that we were way below, as far as they were concerned, what the market should bear with regard to entry-level employees, so they had a number of open positions. Those aren't the same issue. What Sonia was going to do was Sonia, and this is something I don't believe you were privy to, but after that particular meeting, I pledged to the sheriff that we would, as soon as we got through this budget cycle, we would specifically address those departments that had significant openings like EMS, the jail, and specifically why we had a lot of open positions in those departments as opposed to other departments where we didn't seem to have that issue. Sonia was going to address that with those particular departments. And I believe the comment was made, if I'm not mistaken, at that particular budget meeting where we could potentially come back in January and then adjust those areas, those departments with a number of open positions when she came back with a solution in that regard as it relates to compensation. So they're related, but they're nonetheless different.
So at this point, they're not connected.
Not entirely, no, sir.
Okay, so it's basically the decision was made by all the department heads to provide basically a 5% increase.
If I could correct you, the department heads did not make that suggestion. That was the recommendation that Michael and I came up with back in April and March after consultation with Sonia. So the department heads did not come to us. Not a single department head came to us and said, we want a 5% increase for our employees. I want to make that clear.
Fair enough.
I want to clarify one thing because I know some employees watch this. We talk about a 5%, and most will end up getting somewhere in that range. It'll be a 3.25% lift to the table. Yes. Some people are not eligible for a step increase in our current plan, and the reason I'm specifying this directly, hopefully on live, is me and Sonia get a lot of phone calls of why did I not get this or that raise. So in the mayor's recommendation is a 3.25% lift to the table, plus a step increase would get you somewhere in the neighborhood of 5. And then I believe what Commissioner Harris has proposed would be another 1% lift to the table, so that everybody would then get 4.25, and then some would be eligible for the step increase. I just wanted to clarify that. So,
but to be clear, that 1% lift to the table only partially recognizes the need that was demonstrated the other night with the open positions at the jail and EMS in particular. What was talked about in addition to this 1% left to the table, Chairman Harris, was also coming back with Sonia's recommendation about what solutions could be provided specifically in the January timeframe to address more specifically and more targetedly those open positions that do create a significant challenge for the Sheriff's Department, the jail, and EMS. And Sheriff Fitzhugh, if I'm mistaking that, or Brian, if I'm misstating that, please let me know. But that was my clear understanding. Commissioner Harris?
Okay, so has there been a study that shows kind of where we are in terms of, as a county, in terms of pay? In other words, how many folks are being grossly underpaid? It's more of a generic question. And how many are being, above the mean? And so, if we're giving 1% to everyone, again, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm just trying to sort out kind of what we're doing here. We're basically giving everybody 1%, whether they're over or under or Is there a study that would support what we're doing? That's what I'm trying to say.
Let me do a little clarifying myself. First thing I want to say is the increase that we're talking about now, the mayor's proposed increase, which is approximately 5%, and Chairman Harris's proposed increase on top of that does not include the school system. That is completely separate. They do their raises on their own. So I want to clarify, we're basically talking about county general. That's the first thing I want to say. Now, secondly, yes, there has been time studies done. There are pay studies done. But part of the problem that we've run into, yes, we're trying to address some of the acute problems with public safety, particularly the sheriff's office. But we do not physically have the time to go through these just on those departments. There's not enough time between now and our budget ending time for Michael and the few employees that he has that can work on this to specifically go through, because they would have to go through each employee. So there's not enough time to do that. And that's basically, in my opinion, why the 1% across the board was offered. Is that's something we could do and Michael can handle doing with his existing staff without us going to extraordinary measures. It would be almost impossible for him to do it. Michael, if you want to explain that a little more.
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I'll just say, keep on right now, we're only voting on the 177 revenue and expense.
Right.
Is what's in front of us right now. Not to say that other doesn't impact it. I just wanted to clarify what we're actually voting on there.
And while he said that too, this will make changes on what you have in your book, what was given to us on the 28th. So when we, at the end of this day here today, decide on an annual budget to go for publication, we will have pretty much a round figure. But Michael is going to have to calculate any changes that we make in this budget tonight, and he'll have that calculation made before it goes to publication. But I just want to ensure everybody that it will be up to date when it goes to publication with whatever changes we make here tonight. Hopefully I answered some of your questions.
Yeah, definitely. And the eventual number you just were mentioning, that will be a level number, no increase, no decrease. Now I'm just trying to get a sense for, and then backing up, kind of what the effect is. And I realize we're just talking about 177 now, but I think it's important overall to get some context, for what we're trying to do here. And it started with a fairly acute need, and now it's basically morphed into a 1% increase that may be a need. May not. I'm not sure, candidly, from what I've heard so far.
I understand, and I understand your concerns. Any other questions about the 177 fund and the proposed Chairman Harris? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more direct discussion to the 177 fund?
Mr. Chairman, the motion is just to reduce 177. It's not to fund anything else, correct? That'll have to happen later on in this tonight. So if I'm not mistaken, Mark, the motion is or should be just to reduce this fund and not to spend it some other place. That will come up later.
That's correct.
Yeah, we're just reducing 177 and putting it in.
That's
County
correct.
General, right.
Well, the 177, and Chairman Harris is proposing to get enough money. I forget the exact number would need for 1% lift across the board, but he's aiming at getting that figure together. Michael could give us those figures. But anyway, what is around 900,000, somewhere in that area, to get the 1% lift. And this is approximately 600,000 of it, somewhere in that neighborhood. Any other discussion on the 177 fund? That's what we're voting on. Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. All right. Guys, appreciate your yes,
I just wanted, obviously, everyone knows what's happened with my son Asher, and I wanted to try to do this. I want to thank Sheriff Fitzhugh and also Chris Clark, because if it wasn't for their teams, I wouldn't have been able to say goodbye. So you guys were amazing. Thank you.
something I was very concerned over was our budget this year with the sad tidings that we've got about the director's family. But I have to say, and I'm going to pat our assistant director and our finance director at the schools, and also Michael and the other people that have fell in to pick up the slack there. You've got a good team, Director. So, all right, we are now going to item 5, and a review of the 2024-25 other budgets as necessary. And I'm going to bring something up, and which was part of the discussion. We had asked for Mr. Melton, our public defender, to come give us a report, and I think most of you probably got the same email report that I did from the public defender. Do I hear a motion to suspend the rules to allow him to speak, or do y'all want to look at it? Because now is the time, if you're going to make any changes there, now's the time to do that.
So moved.
I have a motion from
Second.
and a motion and a second. All in favor of suspending the rules for Mr. Melton to speak, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Never mind. I was going to follow up and say I haven't seen an email.
Oh, you did not?
I did not see an email.
Oh, okay. That's-
Sorry. I'm voting yes.
Mr.
I'm
Melton's
just-
fixing to explain it to you then. Welcome.
Good evening, members. I brought some extra copies. Email can be sometimes unreliable. Just to recap where we were when I was before this committee 2 weeks ago. Prior to that meeting, I had met with the mayor, had met with Michael, and we had gone through the proposed budget for the Public Defender's Office for this upcoming fiscal year. That budget included the funding of 2 assistant public defender positions, which was basically a continuation budget. One of those assistants serves juvenile court. One of those assistants currently works in circuit court. There was also an item of increase in that budget totaling somewhere around $57,000. And that increase was a result of an increased funding for the district attorney's office. And as you commissioners may recall, there's a statute that requires the county to match 75% of any increase to the DA for the public defender office. And so the mayor and I discussed that, and that increase we decided to put into a fund. Michael, you can help me what line item it goes into, would basically permit me to hire someone on a part-time basis or something of that nature with that expenditure of money. And when I came before, and the mayor and I had discussed a request that I had made for the county to possibly fund an additional assistant public defender. And so we discussed this $57,000. That would be kind of a part-time position, sort of seed money. And the mayor's plan was that it would be used kind of for that purpose, and that looking into next budget year, he would give priority to funding an additional position for our office.
Essentially going from part-time to full-time.
Yeah, essentially going from part-time to full-time. And so those were discussions that the mayor and Michael and I had several weeks ago. And when I was before this commission 2 weeks ago, I want to start tonight by saying what I said then. I certainly accept the mayor's budget, and I do. Now, during the meeting, when we were here 2 weeks ago, I fielded some questions from you, and I appreciate those questions. And that caused me to send out the report that I've just sent. And those questions involved our need for additional personnel, our caseload, and that kinds of statistics. And Commissioner P., I said I could get that to you by tonight. And so the document that you have in front of you gives you an idea, a snapshot of it goes beyond perhaps what you asked me to do. I give you sort of a history of public defenders in the state. But if you look at pages 7 and 8 of the handout and the materials I gave you, it shows that we currently have 14 assistant public defenders, and currently each one of those assistants is handling 995 charges on an annual basis, and that's up. Some cases involve multiple charges. So we keep track of the numbers of cases that we handle as well as the number of charges that we handle, and we keep that per attorney. And there's a graph below that on page 7 that shows the average number of open cases, the average number of open charges, and those lines go all the way back to 2019. To put that in context, on page 8, I refer to two national groups of people who do studies on public defender offices, and they come up with recommended caseload and staffing based upon numbers. One is called the Spangenberg Group, and they're a recognized expert. They came to Tennessee and studied us a few years ago. When I say us, they studied public defenders across the state. And using the Spangenberg Group's formula, and you put that into our current caseload, Spangenberg says that we are understaffed by 4 attorneys in our office. Another group of people that does that, same sort of study, is the Justice Department, and according to their figures, when you plug our numbers in, we're understaffed by 11 attorneys. Quite honestly, I think the Justice Department study overstates the case. I don't believe that we're understaffed by 11 attorneys. But those are the numbers that I produced based upon the request that you gentlemen made of me last week.
Chairman Harris, you're recognized.
Can you, on page 7, where we have county served, and it's got Cannon in here, do they participate or give any financial support on any of this?
The answer to that, Chairman Harris, is yes and no. This commission may recall that somewhere around, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, it's been some time ago, the legislature passed an act that would permit the imposition of a $12.50 litigation fee on all criminal cases, but that would require approval by the county legislative body. I came before this commission approved it. I went before the Cannon County Commission, and they approved it as well. So we get $12.50 in litigation tax from Cannon County and Rutherford County, and we use that money to fund 2 investigators in our office. So that's how Cannon County contributes. We use the money gathered there and the money gathered here to fund 2 investigator positions in our office.
Any other questions for Public Defender? Commissioner, Chairman Gooch, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of an observation, but on page 10 of the report, if you look at Hamilton County, which I'm going to go ahead and say that we're equally populated, they have a total of 22 attorneys on staff. 5 are funded locally, keeping in mind we have 2 funded locally, which I would suggest that the state funds 17 for Hamilton County, where the state is only funding 12 for us.
Yes, sir.
So I have spoken with Representative Stevens, and I'm not sure what the process is to ask for more from the state, but he did commit that he will follow up when the governor's making the budget and lobby for us to get some more from the state. But do you know why there's a discrepancy between Hamilton County and us?
Commissioner, I do not know.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can get that fixed. For
Yeah, one thing that is somewhat to the detriment of counties like Rutherford County. Many years ago, when I first began working for the state as an assistant DA, and then later in 1989 when I became public defender, the rule of thumb at that time was each judicial district went to their local legislators and asked for specific bills for assistance directly earmarked to go to a particular judicial district. And that worked well at that time. But the General Assembly wanted to change that process. And so for the last several years, probably 10 plus years, individual districts don't go down and ask now. The governor will fund a number of assistant public defenders, for example, maybe 10 or 12, and then they give it to the Public Defenders Conference to go meet and divvy them up.
Okay.
And so that's not a good way to do it. You know, but that's the way it's been done at legislative request for many years now.
Well, hopefully we'll have some resolution to that for next year. Obviously, it's too late for this year. So my proposal...
Chairman Gooch, can I interrupt you for
Go
just
ahead.
a moment? I want to recognize the mayor and then come right back to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your indulgence, Commissioner. You know, the question was raised a minute ago about why the discrepancy in the number of public defenders between Hamilton County and Rutherford County and Cannon County, because we're talking two counties. I do believe the population of those two counties is very similar. We may even probably be larger at this point, Commissioner. But I would like to ask a question, because I'm doing a quick cursory comparative analysis and doing a quick Google search. Again, I'm being careful here, but it seems to me that there is a different crime element statistically in Hamilton County than there is in Rutherford County. Is that, do you have any understanding of that, Mr. Melton? Or can you kind of shed some light on that? And the reason I say that because I did a quick Google search, and the search indicated that the violent crime in Hamilton County is almost twice that as it is here. And so would that criminal element, or the potential for that criminal element, have an impact on your services and the funding for those services?
It does not have an impact. I'm not familiar with Hamilton County statistics, so those numbers are probably accurate. But actually, there has never been a formula for how to fund or apportion resources to assistant public defenders, or for that matter, assistant district attorneys.
So if I could interrupt, so you're telling me that if there is everything being equal, and we have one part of the state, and I'm not disparaging Hamilton County, but that Hamilton County seems to have a higher crime rate in that area as opposed to Rutherford County, they wouldn't have a greater need for public defenders? Are you saying there's no formula for that?
No, I think they have a greater need, but yes, there is no formula for that.
My stars. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Melton.
I've been a proponent, quite frankly, for many years of doing some sort of population-based formula for assistant DAs as well as assistant public defenders, because there's some correlation between population and need. I don't know exactly what that correlation would be, but you could have a sort of self-executing formula, I think, that one could come up with. That would be my suggestion.
Chairman Gooch, you recognize.
Okay, thank you. Well, my recommendation is going to be to go ahead and make the part-time person full-time. To add an additional, and I think Mr. Smith may have an exact figure, to increase the attorneys by one instead of the half this year. And I think that we talked about, the mayor has spoken, that it could be that the DA will be getting some more maybe next year, which would then at that time give the DA's office more. And I think we can also look into with the state to see what they can do. But for right now, I'll move that we fund one full-time extra position with the Public Defender's Office.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Michael, do you have any idea what that number would be?
The public defender's budget would increase by $62,191. The new total for that function or category would be $358,267.
Thank you, Michael.
There's one thing I want to clarify too. If this is approved, and then if there is a vote to change any type of tables or pay tables, because this position is on our pay table, it would go up the 1%, meaning whatever this reflects in the minutes, if this were to pass, that dollar amount could change if there's a lift to the pay table. But as it stands right now, as the mayor's current proposed pay table, that new total for the public defender would be $358,267.
Mr. Chairman, and on the revenue side, that comes from?
So on the revenue side, that could come from there's a few options there. One would be, it would come out of fund balance. One, it would be depending on what motion is made tonight as far as moving pennies, we will go back through and recalculate the revenue for the general fund, because when we move pennies on property tax, it changes several revenues. And so there's a chance that it could be absorbed with some increased revenue as we go through and recalculate the revenues in the general fund, since it's a small dollar amount in perspective to the entire budget overall. Those are two options, and then obviously there's always an option to cut something else, but I think those are probably the two best options in my opinion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion of the proposed?
Just to add to my comment, I think from my standpoint, I would like to see us over time get to at least the minimum requirement, or not requirement, or suggestion of 4 new attorneys. But that may take several years to get there. Yeah.
Other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes, motion carries. At this time, are there any other, excuse me, thank you, Mr. Melton.
Gentlemen, I just want to thank you. Thank you.
At this time, are there any other changes that you'd like to make into the 2024-25 budget that we've seen to date? And if I don't hear a suggestion, I've got a question for Michael. I know that we had made a change to the libraries, our contribution or part of the money there. Is the money from the library and this approval from the 177 fund enough to fund the 1% lift that we were talking about, or Chairman Harris has suggested?
You have to give me about a minute or two to calculate, do some calculations real quick.
Well, if you're going to take a minute or two, guys, y'all want to take a minute? We've got a pretty early start, and looks like we're moving along pretty good. We'll take 5 minutes while he's doing that. Okay, we're going to call the budget meeting back into session, and Michael was double checking some figures for us, so I'll turn that back over to him. The question was, do we have the revenues in place on the budget as it is? Have the 1% lift to the employees' table?
Yes.
Heard that. Are there any other changes that anyone would like to make to the 2024-25 budget review? Not, then I want to go ahead and, I don't think we need to make a motion here. We do, or to accept the budgets today, or just move on to the next?
OIT said to ask if check if your mic was on.
Oh, sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, this budget that we're voting on does include the 1%.
I'll need a motion to direct me to add the 1%, and then under item 6A will be to finalize the change move of the pennies for the property tax rate for publication.
So for right now, we'll need a motion to approve the 1% pay raise at this time. Do I hear a motion?
I make that motion.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Motion carries. All right, now we're moving to item 6, proposed the 2024-25 budget for publication, and this will be sent out, I'm not sure which newspapers, but for public review. And the first part we'll look at is the property tax rate by fund. And Michael, can you help us with exactly how you need this worded?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over the changes, then I'll read the actual rate that Mark can put in the minutes, but I want to verify the changes that were made.
This going back to tab 1, the first page there, that's what you're going to be reading, right?
Yes, if you go to tab 1 and flip to, it's probably going to be the third page in your notebook under tab 1. It's going to have at the top a header that says estimated revenue from current property taxes. Does everybody see that? So the original rate proposed had no tax increase, and this will also have no tax increase. And the revision that, based on the amendment earlier, there would be an increase to county general of 0.005 pennies. That rate would be 0.716 would be the new rate. Solid waste would still have no property tax. Ambulance service would increase by 0.001 pennies. That new rate would be 0.069. There's no change to the highway department's pennies. That rate would still be 0.0072. There would still be, as in your book, a decrease of 0.02 pennies from education, which is Fund 141. Their new rate would be 0.5727. There would be an increase in the educational capital projects of 0.014. The new rate would be 0.114. There would be no change in the debt service pennies, and that rate would be 0.3973 for a total proposed rate of 1.8762, which is the exact same rate in total as the prior year.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Did you, okay, the educational capital projects will be 8 cents then, or what?
Educational capital projects would increase by 0.014 pennies for a new rate of 0.114.
And then say the education again.
Education would decrease by 0.02. Their new rate would be 0.5727.
And as he's read that, that's what would go to publication if that's desired by this committee, but I will need a motion to approve this rate that he just read for this to go to publication. I'll entertain that motion at this time.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion to send this proposed budget to
Second.
publication. I have a second. Any further discussion, questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. All right, Section B, revenue and expenditures by fund. And Michael, if you don't mind, cover that one for us also.
So I can read, some of the funds have not changed, and I'll be glad to read those. However, I want to clarify, County General Fund 101, that is going to change based on what was just approved tonight. Fund 118 and 116, 116 being solid waste fund, 118 being our ambulance service fund. Both of those will also change as of tonight, based on the motions that were just passed. Highway fund will not change, so that'll still be the same as in your book. The education fund will not change from what was in your book tonight. It was in your revised book. 177, the revenue and expenditures will both change to the number that I read previously tonight. That will be their numbers going to publication, the little over 18.9 million. And 151 will not change. But I can't give you right now tonight the final numbers for 101, 116, 118 until I go back, and we will have to touch every salary line item in there to increase it for the lift to the table and revise the revenue, property tax revenue, and all of those funds.
Well, Mark, maybe you can help me on what kind of motion we need contingent upon the final adjustments to the budget, something along that lines, or Michael?
I think one thing we could do is take the resolution and say we could take the mayor's request and then list the changes to the mayor's requests, and that's what will go in the publication, will be one option. Because we have made only a handful of changes to the mayor's request this year. We could do that way, maybe one route.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion from Chairman Gooch to accept the revenue and expenditures by fund, which is the mayor's request with the minimal changes that we've made. Do I hear a second? Second. And a second, Commissioner Piercy. Further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, the motion carries. That throws us down to other business, and we do not have other business. I do want to make a quick personal statement myself, though. I have requested the use of the Kittrell Gymnasium at the elementary school for June the 7th from 5:30 to 7:30 for a community meeting. The school board has to approve that, and they meet on the 6th. And if that is approved, the meeting will go on there as proposed. If not, I will try to get a posting out to let you know that it would have to be changed. Is there any other business before? Michael?
I have one clarifying thing for the budget. The opioid committee meets in June, and I believe they have 4 or 5 requests for the next fiscal year. After they meet, we will add their request in total to this budget. However, we do not have the final opioid request for next fiscal year, so that will be added after, probably at our next regular scheduled budget meeting, or at the meeting to discuss the public hearing before you propose to go to the commission. But those haven't been approved all by the opioid committee yet, so that will change this budget. However, just as a reminder, that money has already been received in this fiscal year. It'll just be spent out next fiscal year, but those applications have not yet been reviewed by the opioid committee. Those will come in June. I believe there's 4 or 5. So this budget will still be amended by those amounts if that's passed by the opioid committee. But that's why we just wanted to clarify that change in case you see something come as a change to y'all over the next couple meetings.
Any other business? We're adjourned.